It was at this later stage that our history began to change. This is where the continuity of our liberty became much more tenuous. It was unfortunate that the latter generation of the sovereign body failed to see the pitfalls of the republic they created when adopting the U.S. Constitution, which vested much of its sovereign power in so-called caretakers, representatives, legislators, executives, politicians, bureaucrats, courts, judges, tax collectors, enforcement officers, parties, regulators, and so on. They failed to see the treachery and the poisonous fruit produced far into the future from plans laid by some in their ranks who planted the poisonous seeds in the U.S. Constitution. Although there were several, two of the most egregious and arguably the most treacherous of these poisonous seeds was to give the government the power to self-fund. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution gave the government the power to lay tax upon the nation to finance all of its operations, and Article 1, Section 8, Clause 2 gave the power to borrow money with the nation as debtor. During the drafting and ratification process, they engineered passage of these insults by bringing about debt through war financing, which good and honest people of conscience will always feel responsible to pay back. Thus the need for taxation heavier than that which they fought against the king to abolish was vexing on the minds of those who were to consider and adopt the Constitution. This has proven very fatal to the nation. Now consider what they did. Was it simply the biggest boneheaded miscalculation in history, or was it purposeful deception by some in their ranks? What rational person would hire a caretaker for the estate and the household, then say to them, "Here is the checkbook. Collect freely from our family wealth. Spend whatever you need, and pay yourself whatever you believe you should have, and whatever you need to run the household, take freely. Do this even over our objection. You are in charge. If you should find it necessary to borrow, do so freely, up to and beyond the total wealth of the estate. Ruin the estate if you must. Make our family poor and destitute if it serves your purposes, but make sure to pay back all of our creditors." Yet that is essentially what was done. Imagine the incentives created. How could such a power arrangement ever result in anything other than a dictatorial regime which has no accountability and no intrinsic effectual means to ever rein it in? Summing this up, at present we have arrived precisely at the point where our system was destined to deliver us. At the very least, those who drafted and ratified the accord failed to ensure that the people, as with any estate, maintain the power of the purse over the commissioned custodial government chartered with preserving our wealth and liberty, a monumental failure on their part. John Adams, a prominent but skeptical founder of our republic, said that our Constitution, quote, "was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other," unquote. Adams essentially called it an honor system. He meant that it would only maintain integrity if the people who it governed, from which those who ran it came, were honorable and had a righteous character. If they were not that, it would foul very quickly. His prognostication proved accurate with little haste. Way too many are willing to overlook and justify such reckless policy as well-intentioned, while others are more pragmatic and not nearly as forgiving. At the very least, the degraded level of our current state is a living testament to the adage that good intentions can yield very bad unintended consequences. Regardless of the decades of rationalization and the sophistry since, attempting to justify such an error, whether good intentioned or ill, it matters very little. What matters is the effect of bad policy and the irresponsible actions of those who most assuredly had full knowledge of the future consequence of what they enacted, who chose expediency over integrity. By the enactment of such flawed policy, essentially handing the power to gather all to themselves and broker all to profane and malevolent interests, to control the affairs of the sovereign people. The relationship between sovereign and servant was reversed. We the people were no longer free sovereigns, but now take on the status of debt-ridden subjects. The dictatorial oppression which comes from such as a king is no longer in a far-off land. Instead, it now lives among us, much closer to home. We became subjects, not of the king we threw off, but of the government we created to guarantee our rights and liberty. We were free, but we built a jail and put ourselves inside of it. And we the people are still trapped inside of it to this day, but only because we have refused to unlock and open the door with the key we have always held in our hand. We are trapped in our minds, believing that which enslaves us makes us free.